Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be all about the baby name reveal cards, which is a project I have mentioned a few times now on Patreon, both in a blog post and I believe even in a vlog video at some point. So this is a full process video. So everything from start to finish of me kind of planning out the idea, sketching things out, having some kind of rough versions in my sketchbook, and then all the way to the very, very final versions. So I'm going to walk you through the whole thing here with a bit of a voiceover because I feel like this is the best way to kind of share this project. So at the start of the video there, you saw some really tiny thumbnails, which is how I start any really kind of illustration project of this scale, basically. Anything that I'm really going to be drawing and painting requires some planning, especially when there is some text involved. So I had some smaller thumbnail sketches just to kind of pinpoint my exact idea of what I wanted to do. And obviously I went with kind of a mountain wilderness kind of vibe here, kind of taking from a bit of the theme of the nursery. I wanted to do the same thing for the baby name reveal cards. So here I am doing kind of a larger version. So I took one of my tiny thumbnail sketches and then did like a full page in my sketchbook of it, just so that I can kind of get a feel for the proportion of things, how much space was the letters going to take up versus kind of imagery. You can see I'm playing with the border here. So there's a lot of sketching and planning that goes into this, and you can even see here I have things like moons and stars, and some of that actually ended up getting kind of dwindled away a little bit later. But this is definitely an important part of kind of when I'm doing illustrations, is having this kind of master sketch. So not only do I have kind of like a main kind of outline of what my imagery is going to be and something that I can use to basically transfer later on, but it also becomes basically my template that I then use for coloring. So you'll see once I kind of outline this initial version of it, I then will duplicate it onto the other side, and this is all just in my sketchbook, and I will begin to paint it so I can really start to play with color palettes and kind of figuring things out, which you'll see me do in just a moment. Now, I think I've talked a little bit about the purpose of these cards, but basically the main idea is that I am making these little pieces of artwork. They're all going to be originals, and I'm going to actually make 7 copies of this. So the design is actually really important here, which is another reason why I really want to have this master sketch, is that I want to be sure that this is something that I feel confident that I can finish and re-illustrate and paint over and over and over again, which might sound crazy to a lot of you, but you're also talking to the same woman who hand painted all of her save the dates and wedding invitations, literally made like 200 of them out of gouache, hand painted. So I'm quite comfortable with painting a lot of things over and over and over again. Before I continue on with kind of the function of the cards here, I just want to talk about what I'm doing at this current moment, and I am kind of determining the color palette. So on another page, and you can see sort of my little tiny thumbnails that were over there on the right side, I was kind of playing with the idea of maybe doing like animals and constellations, and it just became too much. I really had to simplify my design quite a bit. But here what I'm doing is just coming up with my color palette. So I'm doing kind of like a really fast, messy version of my master sketch so that I'm able to then kind of see do these colors work together? Am I going to be blending something? Does this overlap well with this? What kind of techniques am I implementing here? And for these cards, I ended up doing a lot of it is with acrylic paint, but then you'll also see some of the details that I do on top are with watercolor as well as some gouache. So it really ended up being pretty mixed media. And actually the final, you'll see later on, I ended up doing all of my outlining with acrylic ink as well. So acrylic paint, watercolor, gouache, and acrylic ink, all of my faves there. So you can actually see me kind of applying some of the watercolor on top of the acrylic paint here. This is a technique that I really enjoy doing. Just kind of creates a little bit more depth, a little bit more color, which is really great. that's what's going on here, is that I'm really kind of just establishing my color palette. You know, I have my bottles of paint lined up and I'm deciding what I'm going to use. So as I continue to do that, let me kind of just go back to the function of these cards. So I'm going to be making 7 copies of them. And copies, I actually mean originals. I'll be painting 7 originals. And the goal and really purpose of these cards is that when the baby is born, grandparents and siblings will then be able to open their envelopes to reveal his name. So we had not shared our baby's name with anyone, and it's been so hard to keep it a secret. We've known the whole time. We shared the gender early on once we knew what the gender was, but we decided to keep the name a secret. So this was going to be our fun little way of sort of revealing it, especially to kind of let people feel included as well, because I didn't want anyone in the hospital when I was giving birth. So no one was going to be really like waiting in the wings for, you know, James to come out and announce or do anything like that. So I thought that it would be a fun way to really kind of replace that feeling for family members, for immediate family, is that they would have these cards that they could then open up and save, and they could write, you know, his birthday on the back or whatever. It would just become like a really special moment and a keepsake as well. So after figuring out all of my colors on a smaller, messy version, you can see now I'm back to that other page in my sketchbook where I had my larger outline version, and now I'm doing a kind of cleaner paint version. So it seems like it's a lot of work doing these kind of early, messy sketchbook versions, but I find that it's really, really important in the process to have these sort of preliminary versions where you can kind of really work out the kinks as well as figuring out the layers of things. And the layering is important here because not only is that's how this particular design is, but it's important when you're doing a lot of originals, like sets. Like if you're doing a set of something and it's a lot of kind of you painting the same thing over and over and over again, I really have to figure out almost like a formula of, okay, what is the first coat I'm putting on everything? What's the second coat I'm putting on everything? What's the third coat I'm putting on everything? And knowing what colors work with what and what overlaps well with what. So that's kind of what I'm doing here, is having really a cleaner version, basically a true version that I can then reference as well back to when I start working on the actual originals. Now, something to note here, you'll see that I'm really concentrating mainly on the imagery, kind of like the backdrop for the text, and that was a strategic move because the text is going to go in last. So I want to be sure that my backdrop, the background, is fully completed, fully layered in, and then what I will do later is add in the text on top. This is just a really kind of easy way to tackle something if you have typography or text in any way. And you'll see I kind of ended up using a little bit of a shortcut, a cheat, not a cheat sheet, but I kind of cheated it a little bit towards the end because I was getting so close to my due date. And obviously I had to get these done before the baby arrived. So we'll get to the text in a moment, but you'll see that I'm purposefully not really addressing that because I'm saving that for a little bit later. So now that I have a color version, I have a full-size outline version, what I'm now doing is copying or transferring over my main outline version that I'm going to use onto the originals. So it's kind of like I've worked out all the kinks, I've figured things out, so I'm going to use some tracing paper and basically retrace the main outline. And you'll even see that I don't trace kind of everything. I end up just kind of drawing the main kind of core background pieces. So it's kind of like the cliffs on the side as well as the mountains. Because I kind of realized during that painting process of that one that's on the left side there, that I can really freehand a lot of the things later on. So you'll see it's missing the trees, it's missing the rocks, the little smaller rocks, that's stuff that I can do later. So here is after the transfer process, ooh, magic, of using the tracing paper. So everything now has a really great, easy, basic outline to it. So now on my originals, I can begin the painting process. So I'm starting first with that kind of sky background. And originally in my thumbnails in the sketchbook, you'll see that I was going to do kind of a gradient. I was really wanted to do this kind of like dark blue to a turquoisey blue kind of vibe. and realized that that was kind of a real big pain in the butt. So I X-nayed that and just went with the solid dark blue background with a little bit of that kind of turquoisey trim around the edge of the mountains and the cliff side as well. I felt that it kind of added that little bit of graphic touch that it needed. Here I'm splattering the stars, or adding some cosmos there to the background. And I'm doing this here, and this is with gouache, by the way. I'm doing this here because I want to be able to just layer things right on top of it, and I also didn't want to have that splatter on top of the mountains or any other sort of darker colors. So I'm really trying to keep things nice and clean and crisp and graphic, kind of as the initial background layer before I start coming in with more of those little freehandy guys, like freehanding the trees and the little shrubs and the little details and doodads all over that really kind of give the cards the character and personality. Now it's at this point in the video that my camera angles have now drastically changed, and that is because I was so far along in my pregnancy. I was literally like days away from my due date, was frantically trying to get these done on top of all the other kind of projects and work-related kind of getting ahead that I was trying to do. So I ended up really kind of moving from my normal workspace where I would be painting these with an overhead camera down into my dining table living room area. So this is me now painting these and working on them at my dining room table, which is not great for overhead footage. So that's why kind of the camera angles start getting a little bit different moving forward here. But just continuing to paint here, obviously layering in the trees, and this is kind of more of the freehandy stuff, really kind of developing that background a bit more, getting a little bit closer to being able to add in some text. And then even here, I'm coming in with some gouache, the little pops of yellow. I actually really, really liked this layer. I thought that it added just that little bit of contrast against the blues that I needed. Now here is the little cheat that I am doing. While in most cases I would normally be hand drawing the text myself, again, I was literally up against a very serious deadline and ended up just printing out some text, got some white transfer paper, and then used that to basically transfer the names onto the card. And white transfer paper is like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like very saturated. So even once you use it and transfer it onto something, you really want to lift up some of it with an eraser. That's just like a little secret tip for you there. Just get a kneaded eraser and lift some of it up. It helps make it not so chalky and messy, which is really great. And even there, I just saw a little bump shot there of me painting on the couch. I literally ended up painting the rest of these, specifically the lettering and then the final outlining on the couch. Because my belly just got so big, it was really difficult to even just paint at a table and sitting in a chair. So I really had to make things work here to get these guys done. But hey, every artist needs a deadline, and there's no bigger deadline than a baby that is on the way. The white text, by the way, is actually done with gouache because I wanted it to have the same look as the splattered stars. And then here I'm using acrylic ink.
How you doing, babe?
Coming along.
Almost there.
Trying to get these cards done before the baby shows up.
Cutting it close, but that's what every deadline, every creative person needs a deadline.
Yeah. So here's a look now at the finished card, fully outlined, as well as with a inky black border, which was really fun to do. I thought it added a nice bold touch. And then for each card, I did a little additional watercolor note that I put inside of each one that just kind of said, well, you'll see what it says in a moment here, but I then bagged and boarded each one and then had the little note that I washi taped on top. So even once family kind of opened it, they would see the note first. If you've opened up this envelope, it means baby boy has arrived Earthside. We'd like to introduce you to, and then they peel it off and it reveals the name. So just a fun little extra touch there and kind of backup to help hide the name. I also added some additional little notes that I stuck on the outside of the envelopes, basically saying, don't open it until we say to open it. and the baby is born. Here's a look at kind of some nice, pretty photos that I took of the finished cards. I'm really quite happy with the way that they turned out. I don't know what family thinks of them yet because I am recording this pre-baby, but I will be sure to let you guys know. Thank you so much for watching and supporting me here on Patreon, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!